Hello, ladies, and welcome to this great episode today of Autoimmune Rehab Podcast, where, as always, you can access show notes and listen to former episodes at autoimmunerehab.com. And today I have Katerina here with me, who has a really good autoimmune story to share with us. So, Katerina, why don't you start off a little bit by sharing with us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your story?
Sure. Hi, Anna Laura. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Katerina. I'm a certified holistic health coach, and I help people who have things like brain fog, low energy, dizziness, and the like due to their chronic illness or autoimmune conditions. I help them with the things that are keeping them stuck in limbo in their health and in their lives. That interest started for me because of my own health experience. About 8 years ago now, I had one day where everything changed for me, and I had dizziness, brain fog, low energy, poor sleep for the first time in my life, stomach pain, a whole conglomerate of symptoms and things that made me feel terribly, terribly unwell. And I knew that wasn't normal, but I wasn't getting answers that I needed to feel better from the doctors and specialists that I was seeing to try to find answers. So I looked elsewhere, and I kind of pulled up my bootstraps and figured it out on my own, by doing a lot of research, by addressing the mindset that I developed as a result of being unwell for such a long time that was kind of keeping me down further and delaying my progress or delaying what I could do with what I had. And fortunately, I eventually felt well enough within what I had, to more actively pursue answers that were productive for me, by seeing specialists that could help me, or alternative medicine practitioners that could help me, like chiropractors and functional medicine doctors and the like, and my own trial and error, of course, too. And am now not 100%, but 75% better than I was 8 years ago, for sure. And I wouldn't, if you'd seen me 8 years ago to the day, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing here now with you today. So my goal is to help other people dealing with the same thing, because it's everywhere now. Pretty much everybody I talk to has some ailment of some kind, whether it be low energy or something more unusual like vertigo or whatever, or maybe not that unusual. I'm hearing that a lot too, to be honest. But to help them figure out what they can do with what they have and how to most efficiently and productively pursue answers when they're not finding them. That's what I hope to help you.
That's good. That's awesome. So you were saying that it came on all of a sudden. Did you honestly feel like you just all of a sudden had the symptoms one day you didn't have them, and the next day it was just like boom?
Yeah, it was. I was in Croatia, actually. I was visiting my family, and it was not an unusual circumstance. I would usually visit my family regularly, and I'd never had issues before. Doing all the things I would normally do, eating a lot of Croatian food, going swimming in the ocean, da da da. But then one day I just had really intense stomach pain, and I woke up the next morning. That was the first night I got terrible quality sleep, and I had vertigo for the first time, which was terrifying. Episodes of vertigo where things would feel like the world was spinning. It's really, really scary. And then also this sense of being off balance on a daily basis, among the other things like the stomach pain and then the low quality sleep, and a lot of things that developed from there later as well. But it was distinctly one day where everything changed for me, which is wacky to think about.
Yeah, that is pretty wacky. And I think that part of the story is a little unusual, because I think most
Mm.
people just gradually start feeling sick over time, and that kind of stuff. Did you ever find out if you had any kind of a virus that triggered that for you? Because I know sometimes people can develop different kinds of viruses or infections that can sometimes trigger it. And then you have kind of that instant, all of a sudden sickness type thing.
We didn't determine that there was a virus. There was some talk about it and some speculation about it, being like an inner ear virus of some kind, because I experienced the dizziness and vertigo and things like that. And it could have been, but it wasn't a definite yes. they think that I have migraine associated vertigo, meaning vertigo without the migraines, but the migraine brain still works the same way, and that's why it's called that. As well as leaky gut. And after I worked with a functional medicine doctor, and she really sat down with me for a few hours at my first appointment. I'd never gotten to sit down with a doctor for that long before. And she walked through my whole entire health history from when I was a kid to today, and looked at everything and asked questions, not just about my physical health, but my overall well-being. What was going on in your life at the time? I was in school, I was studying hard. Okay, what about when you were a kid? Did you have any motion sickness? Yes, I did. Any other stressors or things that might have led up to and contributed to that day where everything changed, when in fact had been building up over time. So it's possible that the stress of being in school and being a perfectionist and having a lot of like pressure I felt put on me kind of started rolling me towards that one day. But we're not totally sure. But it seems
Yeah.
like I had about 2 years prior mono and appendicitis at the same time.
Mm.
And I was on a heavy dose of antibiotics to get better. And the thinking is that when you have antibiotics, you knock out all your good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria you want to get rid of. And that perhaps I never recovered my good bacteria. And then I was exposed to something and my body just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And just knocked everything out of balance for me. And it could be that the migraine associated vertigo is working in tandem with that and made it twice as difficult. And that is my hunch based on how I felt and over the years kind of figured things out, trial and error, and tested different theories. But yeah, it's complicated. The body is complicated and yet simple.
Yes,
because
it
we
is.
all respond
Absolutely.
because we all respond to stress in the same way, ultimately by being sick in some way or unwell in some way. So yeah, it was a very interesting route to discovering what was wrong and starting to feel better for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the functional medicine is really key for pretty much everybody. If you're going to have any kind of autoimmune healing whatsoever, you've pretty much got to involve some kind of functional medicine doctor for at least, a few sessions to get yourself on that road to figuring out
Right.
what's wrong. Because just regular doctors, unfortunately, they just aren't equipped to handle it. They just don't know what they don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. I feel so lucky that I found a functional medicine doctor eventually. It took me years, but I got there. And for anybody listening who doesn't know what a functional medicine doctor is, a functional medicine doctor looks for the root cause of what is happening in your body and of the problem that you're dealing with. And then also takes a holistic view of the problem, like I was saying earlier, doesn't just look at your physical body and physical attributes to determine what's wrong, but considers your whole life. So your career, your relationships, everything, fulfillment, whatever that could be contributing to your overall wellness or lack thereof. And for me, that was huge, huge, because I'd been seeing doctors before that, conventional medicine doctors that were great. I'm in the greater Boston area. There's some of the best doctors in the world are in the greater Boston area, but and specialists, but they didn't have the right lens to approach the issues that I had. They weren't looking for the root cause. Most of them were not looking for the root cause. And if they were, they didn't have the education that would help me, help the metaphorical me to get better and fix that. They just didn't have that kind of training. So the functional medicine doctor was completely revolutionary for me. Looking back, observing everything that had happened and piecing together what might have happened and made sense versus just trying to treat the symptoms by giving me medications when that creates more problems. And I did find more problems. I had SIBO, for example, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which gave me crazy brain fog, major bloating. I looked pregnant by the end of the day. I was so bloated, it was ridiculous. And I wasn't. It was one thing if I was, but I wasn't. It made me feel completely terrible. Like I couldn't I couldn't think. I couldn't do the job that I wanted to do. And at the time, I was also exploring my career. I was, a young adult out of college. This started my junior summer of college for me. And I graduated with a degree of international affairs, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was working different jobs to figure that out. And the lack of fulfillment there also made things harder because I wasn't finding, my body was failing me for the first time in my life. And that was so profoundly debilitating on a physical level, hard to get up and do basic things you need to do. And I'm sure that you can relate to that. Like getting out of the shower, going to take a shower or going to the grocery store, just getting out of bed some days, massively, massively difficult. And then on top of that, I'm trying to navigate being a young adult and figure out what I wanted to do for a career, and what I was doing wasn't fulfilling me. I had a wonderful boyfriend I was in a long-term relationship with, and I still am, thank God, who was very supportive, but, didn't know how to help me with this. And the lack of fulfillment in my job just kind of compounded issues. It was a really, really, really hard place to be. But for me, I eventually reached a point where I was fed up with myself. Not in a blaming way or anything. I knew that it wasn't my fault that I was feeling the way I was feeling or dealing with the issues I was dealing with. But it was my responsibility to do something about it. And I obviously wasn't equipped to deal with that, but I had to figure it out anyway. Yeah. And I did. Primarily, the first step that I took was asking myself, what can I do? What can I do today to help me just get one step closer or feel good today? What can I do? Because I was constantly thinking, and being chronically ill, you're thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't even get out of bed. I can't take a shower. I can't do my job. I can't be the partner I want in my relationship. I can't do fun things because I can't even do the things that I need to do. So I changed that, and it's like, okay, this is hard. This sucks. This is hard. I don't know how to do this, but what can I do today? And I focused on really, really small things. Like, I can turn on a song that I love and just enjoy it, maybe hum along or dance or whatever, even if it takes a little bit of energy away from me. And in so doing, little things like that, and it sounds like silly, how is listening to a song or whatever gonna fix you? It doesn't fix you, but it helps you take steps to fix your mindset, which is changed as a result of living with chronic illness. And that, once I practiced doing that one little thing every day, I started out, I'm like humming or whatever and brushing my teeth and like da 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 da, ain't no mountain high enough, and then the next day I do something a little bit bigger or something else that feeds me with that good energy. And that good energy, don't underestimate the power of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm glad you can relate to that. Don't underestimate the power of good energy, because it feeds you, and you can get it from your job or from anything, gardening, or I don't know, being a good partner or whatever. But it energizes you in a way that you wouldn't expect, and that can allow you and allowed me to make real changes and to more actively pursue answers, find the functional medicine doctor who could help me when I didn't know anything about functional medicine, but I felt energized enough by the good things and the mindset. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Okay, I can do this. Look something up once a day and learn something and get me one step closer to where I could actually get the help I need to feel physically better.
That's awesome. I love that, because what I try to tell people on this podcast all the time, we've had several guests that have brought it up too, is that you really can make all the changes in the world to your diet, but if you don't have the right mindset or have focus on that good energy and that emotional part, it's not going to matter that much, because the reality is that autoimmune is both physical and emotional, and you really have to heal both of those in order to really get healing. So yeah, that's good. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that that's going to work for everybody. Everybody's different, and everybody will have different capabilities, different mindsets, different things that work for them, different things that don't. But that's what worked for me, and that's what I see working for other people too. And I'm glad that that worked for you. That's awesome. Uh, but yeah, it's powerful. I think tapping into the essence of who you are as a human being, um, or what makes you human at a time where you feel like you maybe feel more removed from yourself than you ever have. Like I felt like I lost a sense of identity when I was sick because of the things that I couldn't do that I felt made me who I was and made me valuable.
Yeah.
Um, Reminding yourself that yes, things that you do, um, are valuable, like things you can do for others or in your work, whatever. But you are innately valuable just for being on the planet. You are. You're a living, breathing human being, a living being, just like the rest of the world. You're no more or less valuable than anybody else or anything else. Um, and kind of tapping into that natural human energy. And maybe that sounds a little woo woo or whatever, but
Yeah, well, that's
it,
okay. I
it's
mean,
real. I mean,
yeah, it
it's
is
real.
for sure. Absolutely. So fast forward to today, do you still have the migraines and the vertigo, or is that pretty much a thing of the past for you?
That's pretty much a thing of the past. I haven't had a vertigo episode in a while.
That's
And
awesome.
they only, I mean, maybe I get it like twice a year at most. And that's almost certainly precipitated by some unusual event or stressor, um, that, you can't control. But otherwise, it feels very much within my control. I know what to do to kind of keep it in check and control, things that might trigger it or things like that, but not in a way where I feel like I'm not living my life. It's not that restrictive. Um, I do have a sense of being off balance every day to some extent, but it's nowhere near as debilitating. It's not preventing me from doing the things that I want to do. So I'm pretty content with that from how I was 8 years ago when I felt like I couldn't, rolling out of bed was impossible. Huge, huge, huge leap. And then in the other sense, I'm with the leaky gut issues, I'm still healing from them by adjusting my diet. I'm gluten free and dairy free and avoiding some 30 odd food triggers that I tested sensitive to. And that's something that I would advise people do if they can, to test if they suspect any kind of gut issues, if they're feeling amorphous symptoms like brain fog and low energy, and also maybe stomach pain and things like that, and bloating, to try to get tested as opposed to just kind of guessing, because that takes a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I did that too at one point, and I feel like in the beginning it was really beneficial, but then later on, and maybe it was partly because I started healing more and more, there are certain things like gluten and dairy are always the big ones, and I know it
Mhm.
sucks if you're listening to this and you're thinking, no,
I
because
know.
gluten and dairy is in a lot of our favorite foods. That's just how we are in
Oh,
the American diet and society. And so,
yeah.
that's what we like to eat, that and sugar, and yet those are the big triggers that you really do have to give them up if you really want to, pursue your healing. And some people may be able to handle small amounts of it later on in life after, you've done a big detox and been off it for a while. But I find that most people can't really, I can handle a little bit of dairy now, but I
Mhm.
can't handle gluten at all, and sugar really just makes my joints and everything ache. So I don't do
Yeah.
gluten sugar at all.
But that's helpful for you to know, because
Yeah.
then you know, I mean, yeah, it's a trade-off. And at first I felt the same way. I was like, oh my God, food. So first thing about me, I'm a huge foodie.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean huge. I get joy from food and flavor that other people look at me and go, huh? How is that possible? But I love food and have, grown up with a very Mediterranean style diet, which is a pretty healthy diet as far as the whole world goes, is one of the healthiest. But still, there's a lot of dairy and a lot of cheese, and there's a lot of bread, so a lot of gluten.
Mm.
Um, and at first, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so unhappy. I can't eat all of my favorite things all of a sudden. How am I going to do this? Da, da, da. But then I looked at the list, and I had a list printed out of all the things that I couldn't eat, which included some things I could. And I was like, oh, you know what? When I actually look at this, there are a lot of things I can eat. And I was starting to think about, okay, what do I actually love that I can eat? Oh, this, and this. Okay, I can live with that. You know what I mean? So it's that, again, that kind of mindset shift of what can I do versus what can't I do? And realizing that those changes, like for you, allow us to feel good, be our best selves, and live our lives the way that we want to. And
Absolutely. And the trade-off always there is like, okay, do you want to just eat whatever you want and feel like garbage all the time? Or do you want to like
right.
actually stick to a healthy diet and be healthy and thrive and be vibrant and all that kind of stuff? And quite frankly, we're really lucky because in the last 10 years since I first gave up gluten and most dairy products, there's been a lot more gluten-free and dairy-free food that actually tastes pretty good that has actually come on the market. So there are actually a lot more alternatives for those things and even healthier alternatives for those things than what there used to be.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I've enjoyed using this as a learning experience. I'm a naturally curious person, but I've enjoyed like going down the grocery aisle and saying, okay, what's one thing I can try that's new versus, what's one thing I can't have? It's an opportunity to try something else. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That's great. So what would you say would be the biggest piece of advice other than, what you've kind of already shared that you would share with somebody that's maybe not at their beginning or sort of in the middle. They're still definitely feeling like they're off balance. They're not as well healed as they would like to be. What other kinds of words of wisdom would you give that person?
Um, I would encourage you to work with what you have, focus on what you have. And I don't just mean in terms of your physical being, although yes, also that. But I mean, what tools do you have available to you? What doctors do you have in your corner, or specialists do you have in your corner, or other health or medical professionals do you feel are invested in advocating for you? And you, I guess, first and foremost, I would encourage you to be your own best advocate. Unfortunately or unfortunately, and I prefer to think fortunately, when you're dealing with something like this, only you know what's happening in your own body. And you could have, yes, the same illness as somebody else, but your experience of it and the manifestation physically is going to be different than Joe Schmo. So therefore, you are your own best advocate. And to get to feeling better for you, you need to advocate for yourself. And that means knowing what symptoms you have, tracking them, showing up to your doctor's appointments prepared, like having your labs, having things listed out, visuals, whatever, to give to your doctors so that they have more information to work with to help you. Documenting things as you keep moving, as your illness keeps evolving, as your life keeps changing. Make sure you consider the parts of your life that are not physical and medical. Are you happy in your job? Are you in a relationship? Are you happy being single? Do you want to be in a relationship? What do you enjoy? Do you do things that bring you joy? Gardening, playing a team sport, seeing friends, singing? All those things have an effect on how you feel every day.
Yep.
So I would encourage people to consider their, use the whole word holistic. That's what it means. Consider your holistic self and everything that makes you you and how you feel every day. And use that to your advantage. Think creatively. For me, for example, singing is something that made me feel very, very, very happy and fulfilled at a time when my career wasn't working and I wasn't feeling well. I still pushed myself and joined a local choir, and it met once a week. And I got to meet with a group of people. I got a sense of community, which is incredibly, incredibly supporting and healing in itself, because human interaction is, we are meant to be connecting with other people. And then for me, it's magnified further in song. And everybody's singing the same notes or chords together and creating something beautiful and meaningful to us. That filled me. So consider things in your life, and it could be absolutely anything. Playing video games, I don't know, I don't care, whatever works. Whatever
That's
fills you
awesome.
up inside, makes you happy at the end of the day, do that. Even if it takes away, if you've heard of the spoon theory, one of your spoons. The spoon
Yeah.
theory, who doesn't know, is people with chronic illness came up with this way of communicating to people who aren't chronically ill, how they manage their energy and their days and the things that they do. And you start with, say, 10 spoons in a day, and you have to allocate each spoon for an activity. And some activities will require more spoons or less spoons, but at the end of the day, you're going to get down to 0. So you have to choose carefully. But my advice is, if you can put one of those spoons, or even half a spoon or a quarter of a spoon, to something that fills you, do that. It'll get you farther.
That's awesome. I love that. And do you have any particular, say, maybe favorite apps, websites, books, anything like that you felt like you found helpful that you'd like to share?
Ooh, good question. I found meditation to be helpful for me, particularly in dealing with anxiety before sleep, or that I developed around not sleeping well, which prevented me from sleeping well further. So meditating, I tried a few different apps. I know there's the Calm app. I liked Insight Timer personally, because you could search keywords like anxiety and it will give you suggestions based on that particular idea. And I still use that. I use that every night before I go to bed. Very helpful. What else? I suggest going on Facebook or looking in your community. But I, for example, went on Facebook and joined a chronic illness group. And that helped me feel not quite so alone. And I connected with somebody who was also dealing with chronic illness, who was around my age. And I didn't really know anybody my age who was dealing with that. That helped me feel just not alone. And obviously there's like idea exchange too. And having a friend is always helpful, no matter what you're going through. But I would advise looking for sources of community for you, maybe in things you already do. Don't be afraid of sharing that you have chronic illness. You might get negative responses. It's an unfortunate reality, and I certainly experienced that myself. But it's not worth holding back for the support that you will get from somebody if you do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Uh,
That's great. Okay, so thanks for sharing so much, Katerina. So before we get going, why don't you just tell everybody how they can get in touch with you? And then we'll, of course, include the links in the show notes so that people can have those links directly there as well.
Okay, thank you. You can find me at thrivehealthcoaching.org. And I have my information, story, things on there. And you could book a free consult with me if you're interested in trying to get unstuck with your chronic illness in life. And we can talk through some things and give you some practical next steps to move forward. And I can also be found on LinkedIn most frequently, and Facebook as well.
Awesome. Cool. We'll have the links in the show notes. Thanks for sharing. And I encourage you to reach out to Katerina if her story is related to you and you want to connect with her. That would be awesome.
Thank you so much, Anna Laura. I really appreciate it.
No problem.